Good morning, my dear friends. In the last two sessions of this Unit 22, World of Microbe, we have seen the introductory part of the microbes, the virus, bacteria, prions and fungus. In the second part, we have discussed that how these microbes are useful for us. And this is the third part. We will discuss about what are the harmful or the dangerous effects of these microbes. Let us introduce the word disease. Dis-ease. This means against, just like dislike. And ease is the comfort zone what we have. Against our comfort zone or easiness. Disease. That is the worst word you should remember, that disease is something that will bring us discomfort by means of malfunctioning any of the part inside the living body. How can we define the word disease? Disease is nothing but an impairment or malfunctioning at the normal living of a living organisms that actually disturbs or modifies the vital functions of that particular microorganisms. If you look at the disease based on their extent of occurrence, they are epidemic, endemic, pandemic and sporadic. What are these types of disease? How are we classifying it? First one is endemic. Endemic diseases are just a disease that happens only in a particular geographical area, that too with only few number of people are affected with this. Example, in the sub-Himalayan region, people are affected with goiter, deficiency of iodine in the food that causes enlargement of thyroid gland. It happens only in that particular area, and with few number of people are only affected with that. In a particular geographical area, large number of people are affected with the disease. Example, influenza. Let's say if influenza starts spreading in a particular geographical area, so many people will get affected because of this influenza. This is an example of that. The next one is pandemic. So this word we are familiar with now, because we call COVID-19 as a pandemic, meaning huge population is affected throughout the globe. Another example for this pandemic is HIV. So throughout the globe, many people are affected irrespective of what geographical area they belong. And the last one is sporadic. The fourth type of disease depends upon their extent of occurrence is sporadic. This type of disease are happening very occasionally. Example, malaria, it comes in a season, it goes, and the next season also it will come. So in these aspects, the extent of occurrence, diseases are classified into four: endemic, epidemic, pandemic and sporadic. The microbes and disease. Let's start with the word what is called a disease. Let's split the word into dis and ease. Dis means what is something against, opposite words, like, dislike. Like the word, when you add dis, that means it is against the word. Against what word? Ease. Ease means we are in a comfort zone, like that. So something that is against the easiness of us, that is called dis-ease. So let's look at a definition of disease. This is an impairment or malfunctioning of the normal state of the living organism that disturbs or modify the performance of vital functions of the body. That means any kind of changes that actually changes our vital body functions are called disease. If you look at the types of disease based on the extent of occurrence, how far is occurring, either locally or globally, like that, they are into four types. The first one is endemic. That means small geographical area the people are affected with a disease. That is very few in number. Example, goiter in sub-Himalayan regions. You know goiter, the enlargement of thyroid glands due to the deficiency of iodine. So this is a locally happening, and with very few people this type of disease you can find it. So they are called endemic. The next type of disease to the extent of occurrence is epidemic. That means small geographical area as large number of patients. Example is influenza. Influenza is a disease that actually causes, but in a small area, but huge number of patients will be there. And looking at the third one is pandemic. That means throughout the globe, throughout the world, high number of infected people also will be there. Such type of a disease is called a pandemic. Example, HIV, also COVID-19. And the last one is sporadic. These type of diseases are occasionally happening, only very few times. Example is malaria. Malaria is happening only few times, not throughout the year, but it happens sometime. But it is happening again and again. This type of disease are called sporadic. So far we have seen four types. So far we have seen four: endemic, epidemic, pandemic and sporadic. The next point we have to discuss is the manifestation of the disease. In this we have to look into a few aspects like the communicability of a disease. How come a disease is communicable? Some of them are infectious, some of them are non-infectious. Infectious disease like the influenza, HIV, all this disease can be communicable from one person to another person. They are communicable disease. Non-communicable diseases are just like diabetes, cancer, all these things won't be spreading from one person to another person. So disease can be communicable or non-communicable disease. Next point is the point of entry. These diseases, all of them don't behave at the same way. Like some disease spread through air, some spread through water, some spread with the help of other vectors, animals, birds, like that. That is the difference between the point of entry of a disease that varies from one disease to another disease. Next point you should remember is the reservoir of infection. What is the meaning? A reserved package that is ready to cause disease. If you look at a virus or something, bacteria that can infect us, may not be so much dangerous for a vector, or sometimes these bacteria can grow in the soil or a water in a huge quantity, but that doesn't change anything in the water. So water or a soil can act as a good reservoir where these bacteria or microbes can keep growing and equip themselves for a mass attack. So reservoir means where these bacteria or the microbes can start growing, multiply into millions of copies before it makes an actual infection. So that is actually called a reservoir of infectious microbes. The next point in the case of disease is the incubation period. It is not like a pathogen microbe get inside our body and the next moment itself it will start making damage or fever or some kind of symptoms inside our body. No. First, these pathogenic microbes will get inside our body, stay there for some time to multiply them to millions of copies so that actually it can make a severe damage inside our body. The time taken for this, the point of entry and actual infection start, in that between that they need some time so that they can prepare itself for a mass attack. That particular time is called incubation period. The next word you should remember is infection. Infection is nothing but the point of entry, multiplication, development, everything, and starting the damage, causing the organism to start losing its vital functions. The entire process is called an microbial infection. These are the points you should remember when we talk about disease. the communicability of disease, point of entry, reservoir of microbes, incubation period, and infection. So when we look at a disease, you should remember whether it's a communicable one or non-communicable one. What is the incubation period? What is the point of entry? What is an infection? Some need a longer incubation period. Some microbes does not need a longer incubation period. Let's start the next one, a manifestation of a disease. In that, these diseases are how much they are communicable. In the case, some of them are infectious, they are communicable. Example, TB and HIV all can be communicable from one person to another. Non-infectious, the next one. They are non-communicable. Example, diabetes. Diabetes is a disorder inside our body that will never be infected to another person. That will be staying only with that particular patient. They are non-communicable diseases. If you look at the point of entry and place of infection, these infections can go through air, water, soil, or through animals, or by means of infected persons itself. And the reservoir of infection is the next point you should remember. Is some places, before it goes for an actual infection, these microbes can multiply or thrive in a huge quantity. Example, in water, the large number of mosquito larvae are present. Or in the soil, lot of microorganisms are keep growing. Some of them are dangerous for us. So such locations where these microbes are thrive or multiply in a huge number for an infection is called the reservoir of infection. Most of the time it is the soil and water acts as a good reservoir of infectious microbes. The next point is incubation period. Actually, the time when the microbe come inside our body, it doesn't immediately start an infection. Instead, it will stay inside our body. It will use all the resource of our body, the nutrition and other things, to multiply itself so that it can start attacking after some time. So sometimes the infectious agents has to multiply, or it has to reform itself, or it has to develop itself to become a successful infectious microbe. So that time interval is called as incubation period. Before they after the entry and a successful infection, they need some time to prepare itself. That time is called incubation period. Actually, it varies from organism to organism. Some they need 1 or 2 weeks to go for full infectious mode, and some need only 3 to 4 hours, some need only 12 hours. So like that, it varies from organism to organism. An infection is actually, the word means the entry of the pathogen, also the development and multiplication and damaging the host. The entire thing we call collectively as infection due to a microbe. The next topic we are going to discuss is the harmful effects of the microbes. How come they actually damage inside us? By means of two things, either by tissue damage or by toxin secretion. For example, tuberculosis. This actually destroys the cells or tissues inside the lungs. Hepatitis. These microbes are harmfully damaging the liver cells, leads into liver cirrhosis or something like that. So the microbial infection can be by destroying the tissues directly. Example is hepatitis and tuberculosis. So another type of harmful effect is that these microbes, instead of directly damaging the tissues, sometimes they will secrete toxins. These toxic substances can go and infect or damage the tissues in later stages. Some microbes directly go for tissue damage, and some other will go for a secretion, a toxin secretion. Those toxins will go and destroy the tissues. And if you look at the harmful effects of microbes exactly inside our body, some of them are tissue damaging microbes. Example, tuberculosis. These will actually damage the lung tissues itself. Whereas in some other cases, these microbes going for secretion of some toxins, some substance out of its body, that will go for tissue damaging inside our body. So by means of two things, direct tissue damage, toxic secretions will make the tissue damage, not directly by the microbe. Next thing we are going to discuss about the type of disease based on an aspect that how this disease can be spread from one person to another person. You know that some of the disease can spread through air, some of them can spread through water, some of them can spread through a mosquito, or some of them can spread through an animal. Some of them are sexually transmitted disease. So there are many types of disease. That is what we are going to see the next. Let's start with the airborne disease. Disease that they spread through air. Maybe through a cough, maybe through sneezing. The minute infectious microbes stay in the air and it spreads around, and when the next person inhale that particular air, that actually goes inside the nose and it makes damage inside our system. You heard that we are not supposed to breathe through the mouth and you should always keep our mouth closed. In fact, there is a scientific reason behind it, that if you keep open your mouth, you will keep breathing through your mouth. But there is no filters for the microbes inside your mouth. Instead, if you look at your nose, you can see that mucous membrane, that actually kind of sticky thing that will trap the microbes, and you have hair growth inside your nose that actually prevents the entry of microbes to an extent. So that is why people always ask you to, maybe your elders, they ask you to close your mouth and don't breathe through your mouth. So that is the secret behind it. It actually prevents the airborne diseases. Example for airborne disease is common cold caused by rhinovirus and TB, tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And the next type of disease is called waterborne disease. These type of disease, they spread through the water as a medium. Examples: poliovirus and cholera, Vibrio cholerae. These two diseases can spread through the water. You have to refer the table 22.3 that describes various diseases caused through air, and 22.4, 5, 6 and 22.7. These tables, at least 2 to 3 of them, you should write in your fair notes. Next, when we look at the types of disease, what is discussed in table 22.3 to 22.7. These tables actually describes various types of disease, viral as well as bacterial disease. You have to copy this one to your fair note, because these are all very important things you should know, because they describes actually the name of the disease, the pathogen, symptoms, how to treat them, how to prevent them. Okay, let's start with the first one, airborne disease. That is a disease that they spread through the air. They are by means of cough or a sneeze from an infected person. These microbes can travel and cause infection in another healthy person. Example is common cold and TB. Next one is waterborne disease. Example is polio and cholera. This contaminated water that actually carries the microbes, when it travels from one location, and if the next person utilizes this contaminated water by means of drinking or taking bath, the person get infected. The next type of disease we are going to discuss is vector-borne disease. That is a carrier that actually brings the pathogen from one location to another. That is an infected person, that these vectors will take the microbe from there and deliver it to a healthy person, making the healthy person also sick. Example of this vector is mosquitoes. What are the diseases these mosquitoes are spreading? We shall see them one by one. The first disease, vector-borne disease caused through a mosquito, is malaria. Malaria is caused by a protozoan called Plasmodium vivax falciparum. So many species are there. In common, Plasmodium. These protozoans are causing severe damage inside our body, and these mosquitoes, especially female Anopheles mosquitoes, they are carrying this specific pathogen from one location, one person to another person. So malaria is caused by an organism, but these mosquitoes are actually the vector that carries this microbe and deliver it to another location. So it's a vector-borne disease. The next disease caused through a mosquito is Chikungunya. This chikungunya is caused by a virus that is actually carried from an infected person to a healthy person through these mosquitoes. Chikungunya is spread through Aedes aegypti, a type of mosquito that actually acts as a vector for this particular chikungunya disease. Next disease where the mosquito acts as a vector is the dengue fever. It's also called as a break-born fever because it causes severe pain in the bones and muscles. This is actually caused by virus, but still these mosquitoes are responsible for spreading it from one person to another person. Aedes aegypti, again a type of mosquito that actually plays a role in this. In this dengue fever, actually this virus targeting the blood platelets. Actually, that is the blood platelets are actually giving the viscosity to the blood. Once our blood loses the viscosity and blood platelets count are getting reduced, our blood become less viscous. That means it can even ooze out through the minute pores under the hair. That is why in advanced stages of dengue, even the blood coming out through the minute pores next to the hair. The next disease spread through the mosquito or the mosquito acts as a vector is the Malaria. We call them as Elephantiasis. This Elephantiasis is caused by a nematode worm. These nematode worms actually infects our lymphatic system. So the lymph nodes actually getting infected, that actually making swellings, that the leg becomes swelling, and we call this disease as Elephantiasis. This particular worm is also carried away from an infected person to a healthy person through this vector as a mosquito. This Elephantiasis disease is spread through Culex mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are very dangerous that we have seen 4 examples that these mosquitoes acts as a vector to spread this disease. What we have seen so far is Malaria, dengue, chikungunya and malaria. These so many deadly diseases are spread through these mosquitoes. The third type we are discussing is the vector-borne. That means an agent is acting between an infected person and a healthy person. Agents like mosquitoes are spreading many diseases. We are discussing 4 in short. The first one is malaria, is caused by a Plasmodium vivax or other species of Plasmodium like falciparum and all. They are spread through an agent or a vector called female Anopheles mosquitoes. And chikungunya is caused by a virus, is again transmitted by a vector Aedes aegypti mosquitoes. And the next one is dengue fever that actually destroys the platelet count inside our body. That is a dangerous one infected person to a healthy person through Aedes aegypti mosquitoes. And Malaria, a nematode worm that actually causes Elephantiasis disease that actually infects and causes swelling of the lymph nodes, especially on the legs, is called Elephantiasis, is spread from an infected person to another healthy person through a vector, a Culex mosquitoes. So these mosquitoes are very deadly, dangerous things you have to take care of. So these mosquitoes are very dangerous thing. You actually have to treat this fellow just like a complete enemy. So what are the ways to prevent these mosquitoes? If you look at that, these mosquitoes can be prevented by applying some mosquito repellent ointments, or you can go for mosquito screens on your windows or in the doors. But these measures you need to keep doing this every day. Instead, if you are successfully eliminate the breeding location of this particular mosquitoes, you can successfully handle the stopping of these particular diseases. So what are the breeding places? Mostly the stagnant water, or these are the places for these mosquitoes to start breeding. So if you avoid this stagnant water, or if you pour some oil in the stagnant water, this breeding mechanism completely stops. In these ways you can successfully handle these mosquitoes. Also, in this topic, how can we prevent the mosquitoes? Like, you can go for making the screens, the mosquito repellent screens on your windows and doors. Or you can go for some kind of application of oils, eucalyptus, or these kind of oils can be used, or mosquito repellent creams can be used. Apart from this, destroying the breeding space for these mosquitoes is an effective way. For example, some stagnant water is a place for mosquitoes to go and breed there. Like, you may have an uncovered bottle or a jar or a pit or something like that. Please keep it closed so that the mosquitoes will find no place for breeding. So that actually will reduce the tremendous number of mosquitoes in your location. So by using this type of preventive mechanisms, you can reduce the number of vector-borne infections like malaria, dengue, chikungunya, and filaria, and all can be easily be eradicated by controlling these vectors. Because these diseases don't spread through other mode, they need a vector. So by killing these vectors, we are actually controlling this disease. The next type of disease that actually spread through animals, that is the next one. So far we have seen disease spread through air, water, through vectors, and now coming to animals. Animals like a person can transmit one disease to another healthy person. Influenza, H1N1, can be spread from one person to another person. Next one, avian influenza. These birds can transmit the H5N1 influenza to another person. And the next disease spread through animals is swine flu. This is carried through the pigs. So by direct in contact with these animals, or the human being itself being infected by means of physical contact or something like that, the person actually, the healthier person also getting this one. Just by touching these birds or animals, or by eating not properly cooked food items, can also cause this disease to come to us. So these are the diseases we should take care of. Some animals also spread this disease to us. The last one in this we are going to see is sexually transmitted disease. Example, HIV and hepatitis and all. So if you look at HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, that actually comes inside and destroys the WBC cells. What is there for WBC cells? WBC cells are our immune system, our soldiers inside our body. Once we lose the WBCs, what will happen? Our immunity will go down, so that any other simple disease can come and attack us and we will die, maybe due to that particular disease. So once we don't have any police or an army inside us, every thief, any kind of thief can come inside. Any kind of invasions can be accepted because there is no defense system at all. So that is the case happens with the HIV, that actually brings down our entire immunity system, that causes any pathogen can come and attack us. This HIV virus is a retrovirus. That means the genome of that particular virus is RNA, not DNA. So this HIV virus, they actually transmit not through just physical contact, but by sexually transmitting from one person to another person, or by means of accepting the blood transfusion from an infected person to a healthy person, or from the mother to the fetus inside her womb, can also be a possible way of getting HIV transmission. And apart from this HIV, gonorrhea, syphilis. These are another type of sexually transmitted disease. Next one, we are going to see disease transmitted by animals. First one is swine flu. This disease is an airborne, but the carrying animal is the pig itself can carry this swine flu to the human beings. Influenza H1N1 by the infected person itself is the carrier, and looking at the avian influenza, birds are causing H5N1. This is also an example of these are the example of disease transmitted through animals. If you look at the sexually transmitted disease, for example, HIV, gonorrhea and syphilis are all transmitted through sexual contact from an infected person to a healthy person. If you look at the HIV virus, they are retroviruses. That means their genetic material is RNA. They actually destroys the WBC cells, which is actually the immunity of our body. So once we lost this WBCs in huge quantity, we actually lose our immunity so that any disease can come and attack us. That is what about happening with the HIV. These actually transmit from one person to another by means of sexual contact or usage of surgical equipments which is not cleaned properly, or by blood transfusion, transfer of blood from one person to another. If you are not screening it properly, that may have the virus inside. And the last one is fetal transmission. If the mother has HIV and the fetus, the baby inside her womb, can also get the HIV by means of fetal transmission. That is the end of this lesson, and we will see you in the next lesson very soon. That is the end of this session, and in fact this entire lesson itself. I hope you have completed the writing the fair note part, and don't forget to go through and write at least 2 to 3 points from all the table 22.3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 into a fair note, and go through these tables very importantly. They are actually discussing what is the name of the disease, the causative agent, the symptoms and treatment and prevention. That actually gives you too good information about most of all the disease. So please don't avoid these tables, especially 22.3 to 22.7. Go through that, copy that into your fair note and send it to me in the group. So that is all for the World of Microbe Unit 22, and I hope I will be seeing you again in another lesson. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.